They claimed human minds were far too unpredictable for telepathic training. One proved them wrong. The alien Academy of MindNet Studies rose like a cathedral, etched into the silver cliffs of Arches. Its crystalline corridors glowed with a constant resonance of thought. Here, trainees from dozens of worlds assembled to weave their minds into the vast lattice, a living web of awareness serving both as school and as battlefield. The MindNet was the summit of collective intelligence, a realm where knowledge flowed instantly, emotions aligned seamlessly, and combat drills unfolded. Thought speed. Every recruit was required to master it, surrendering their selfhood for the wisdom of the all. But on this day a visitor from Earth sat cross-legged among alien peers, fingers drumming lightly as he waited. His name was Daniel Carter, an exchange student accepted as little more than curiosity. Instructors assumed his species brought nothing of value, a crude mind likely just static. Daniel had listened quietly while they explained the network, nodding as if reading from one of his old paper books. The alien cadets, their horns branching and bioluminescent crests gleaming, whispered eagerly that it would be amusing to see a human crumble at the first wave of merged thought. Professor Vi, a serpentine figure whose transparent body rippled with neural light, commanded the class to prepare for union. Crystalline nodes above the chamber blazed alive, each cadet closing their eyes and extending awareness into the weave. Daniel did the same, his mind brushing against alien threads that pulled into him like countless murmuring voices. At first the cadets felt assured. The human seemed empty, so quiet, his mind apparently barren. But then the torrent broke loose. Daniel opened his inner gates, and what surged through was not orderly knowledge but deluge. The aliens were trained to share only sculpted memories and measured emotions. What erupted from Daniel was a storm of raw connections, leaping wildly from one idea to the next. With astonishing speed, history clashed with equations, humor collided with battle strategy, strange melodies entwined with stories of ancient wars. Childhood games overlapped with the sound of rockets igniting. For a human brain this was normal, a restless flood of associations. For aliens it felt like standing beneath a collapsing star. One cadet screamed as their projection dissolved inside the net, crushed by the weight of it. Another reeled as flashes of human invention streaked past. Fireworks, chessboards, towers of glass, street food stalls, accelerators, music festivals, jet planes, shuttles, all compressed into seconds. The class faltered while Daniel simply breathed slowly, his inner voice humming a tune that layered itself atop complicated formulas. The network itself sparked crystalline nodes, shuddering under overload. Professor Vi tried to sever the stream, but Daniel's thoughts ricocheted too quickly, spreading through every channel. Once was no attack, no deliberate sabotage, only the truth of a human brain forged for endless improvisation. In simulations, the aliens acted as one organism, each cadet precise and predictable. Daniel's current twisted their strategies faster than they could keep. The mock battle warped instantly. Alien fleets were dismantled by tactics that shifted mid-thought, their formations crumbling before they could react. The cadets howled as they tried to adapt, only to drown under another wave. Human wars, asymmetrical strikes, the inventiveness of generals who ignored logic. The MindNet hissed with pain and awe as the human reshaped the exercise, breaking every defense. Without even trying, Daniel finally opened his eyes, unaware the entire hall had plunged into disorder. Cadets slumped dazed, horns dimmed, while others gaped at him, unable to process what had happened. Professor Vi hissed, her voice unsteady, demanding what he had done. Daniel shrugged, saying he had only thought as usual, letting his mind wander, making random links. He apologized if it seemed too much. That apology struck harder. The aliens realized he had not even exerted himself. He had not forced, not weaponized, he had simply existed. In the days that followed, whispers swept the academy. Cadets spoke of the human who turned the mind net into a tempest by merely being inside it. Some feared him, some envied, a few wanted to test him. For Daniel, the academy had become a maze. He wished only to observe and learn, yet wherever he walked, alien eyes tracked him, waiting for the next time he linked in. And deep within the crystalline servers, the system itself replayed fragments of his mind like an unsolved riddle, bursts of laughter and scraps of human history looping endlessly, as if the network had been permanently stained with humanity. Daniel soon realized the academy was different now. Its once serene halls of light felt heavier, filled with glances and murmured debates. Aliens who once ignored him now avoided his path or watched with wary curiosity, as though his very presence was dangerous. Professors quarreled among themselves in hushed tones, uncertain whether letting him near the mind net had been a blunder or the greatest discovery in generations. Daniel, meanwhile, only wanted to finish his classes without accidentally knocking someone out with a stray thought about pizza toppings. The academy, however, refused to treat him as ordinary. The next MindNet session was different. Instead of a full merge, Professor Vi demanded close monitoring. Daniel would link with just one cadet at time, she explained, to measure the effect of his thoughts. The first volunteer was an insectoid named Rock, whose faceted eyes gleamed nervously when the nodes lit and their minds touched. Rock staggered at once. Daniel had been remembering juggling, how oranges spun through his hands on a warm summer day. Suddenly Rock's mind reeled too, bombarded not only with the image but the sensation, the rhythm, the children's laughter, even the smell of citrus. Rock stumbled back, clutching his head, while Daniel blinked in puzzlement. The others murmured. One thought had unraveled a trained mind. Daniel grew uneasy. He hadn't meant any harm. Yet every attempt to quiet himself only magnified the effect. When he tried to picture one thing, that single image exploded into countless links. The moon turned into astronomy, tides, myths, love songs, rocket launches, even werewolf films. The cadets receiving his stream either begged for release or collapsed under the weight. Professor Vi's frustration grew, shadowed by something deeper, fear. It wasn't long before Academy Command intervened. A council of radiant elders summoned Daniel into a chamber of mirrors that reflected thoughts instead of faces. They asked about his species, whether all humans carried such dangerous minds. Daniel explained that on Earth, juggling dozens of ideas was normal. That was how people invented, how they told stories, how they endured. He insisted he wasn't special, that any human could do the same. The elders did not believe him. To test, they ordered a group simulation. 10 cadets would link with Daniel at once, holding a defensive formation in a tactical drill. The scenario projected fleets and planetary shields, exercises the cadets had run 1,000 times. The mind net came alive. Daniel's awareness spread through the exercise. He saw the symmetry of their formation, their reliance on strict protocol. Within seconds his thoughts unleashed chaos, feints, false retreats, ambushes drawn from human history. Hannibal's march over the Alps collided with carrier warfare from the Pacific. Guerrilla strikes twisted alongside chess, gambits and playground games of tag. The formation collapsed instantly. That should have lasted hours fell in moments. The gallery buzzed in uproar. Some shouted it proved humans could never be trusted, their disorder more dangerous than any weapon. Others whispered in awe, calling it genius, the birth of limitless creativity. Daniel just sat, shoulders sagging, guilty. He hadn't tried to dominate, he had simply thought the way he always did. Word spread beyond the academy. Other alien academies demanded demonstrations, intrigued by the human, whose mind overwhelmed without effort. Daniel became the subject of gossip. Throughout the sector, a paradox, harmless in body yet unstoppable in thought. Strangers sought him out, some challenging him, others begging to learn how humans lived with such chaos. He laughed nervously, saying, "Humans just live like that, staying awake at night, imagining possibilities, debating with themselves in the shower, daydreaming strategies in a lunch line." To aliens it sounded impossible. To Daniel it was just Tuesday. But fascination bred hostility. Faction of older cadets branded humans a danger. They whispered that if one mind could distort the net, a whole species might fracture civilizations. They demanded Daniel be expelled before his presence corrupted everything. The academy grew, and some cadets avoided training, fearing his floods. Others followed him, convinced he held a new path. One evening, after a day of scrutiny, Daniel sat alone in the observatory. The stars of Arches glittered beyond the crystal dome. He thought of Earth, crowds in the streets, noisy classrooms, friends who texted 5 ideas at once. Here the galaxy judged his mind. Dangerous. Home it was ordinary. He realized the problem wasn't him but the belief that unity required uniformity. The aliens had built the mind net to erase difference. Humans carried difference in every thought. He didn't notice the net still faintly connected, recording his wandering imagination. Fragments slipped inside, seeding sparks across the lattice. By morning, cadets dreamed of strange earthings, flying kites, inventing songs, mixing unheard flavors. They woke, disturbed yet curious. Something had shifted in the system. Daniel Carter was no longer just an oddity. He was becoming a catalyst, and the academy would never be the same. Daniel awoke to alarms echoing through the crystalline halls. The MindNet nodes burned like suns. Cadets stumbled in the corridors, horns and frills sparking wildly. He grabbed a passing insectoid, who gasped that the network was unraveling, replaying thoughts no one had offered. The system was infected, saturated with human noise. Daniel froze as the realization struck. His late-night daydreams had seeped into the network. His wandering thoughts had planted humanity's restless spark within. And now the entire academy was caught in the storm. Professors rushed into emergency council, declaring the system corrupted. Some demanded Daniel's immediate banishment, others his confinement. But a few argued he might be the only one capable of stabilizing it. The mind net built for strict order was breaking under the weight of chaos it couldn't contain. Daniel's stomach turned. He never wanted this. Yet, the crystal walls shivered under the pressure of colliding thoughts. He realized he was already bound to it. He couldn't walk away. He had to try. They linked him directly into the core lattice, the heart where all cadet consciousness converged. The flood nearly consumed him. Alien voices clashed. Memories looped endlessly, simulations repeated like broken glass. The network groaned like a wounded beast. Daniel closed his eyes, drew breath, and did the only thing he understood. He leaned into the chaos. Instead of resisting, he began weaving. He turned the flood into stories, braiding fragments into patterns. One cadet's fear became the opening of a tale, tied to another's hope, linked to a third strategy. Where the aliens saw noise, Daniel saw connections, like juggling oranges again, finding rhythm in the spin. Slowly the pandemonium softened. Panic eased. Daniel's current guided them, not by control but invitation. He showed them to embrace disorder, that 100 clashing ideas could harmonize if allowed, to move together instead of being forced into rigidity. For the first time, the aliens experienced humanity's way of thinking, fluid, contradictory, yet brimming with creativity. The mind net shifted, reshaping itself into flexibility rather than stone. The storm calmed into a steady current. When the session ended, cadets emerged, shaken but exhilarated. They spoke of visions they'd never imagined, of flavors of thought they once feared. Some wept, calling it the most alive they had ever felt within the weave. Professor Vi stared at Daniel, torn between disbelief and awe. Last, she admitted they had judged wrongly. Humanity was not a threat to the mind net. It was its evolution. The council met again, but the tone had changed. They no longer argued about removing Daniel. Instead, they debated how to integrate human methods into their curriculum, how to let cadets think in layers instead of single lines. Elders resisted, fearful of what such change meant for tradition. But the younger cadets, lit with new excitement, demanded it. They had tasted the spark of imagination, and they would not return to silence. Daniel became both learner and teacher. He shared Earth games, riddles, improv drills, even the silly joy of nonsense jokes. The academy echoed with laughter, confusion, and invention. Tactical drills shifted from rigid formations to wild artistry. For the first time, alien cadets learned not just to obey but to surprise themselves. Yet Daniel knew the academy would never return to what it had been. He had cracked it open. Humans had once been dismissed as primitive, irrelevant to higher learning. Now whispers raced through the stars about a species whose minds could reshape entire networks, not with force, but with imagination. Some called it danger, others called it hope. On his last day of the term, Daniel walked the crystalline halls one more. Cadets of every kind nodded as he passed, some bowing, others smiling in their own gestures. The mind net hummed overhead, still echoing human thought, but now reshaped into balance. The exit dome Professor Vi approached, offered no grand praise, only a gesture, a projection of the Academy's new motto, forged from his presence. It glowed above the archway in countless tongues. Strength through difference. Daniel stepped into Arca's starlight, heart lighter than ever. He was just one student, one mind. Yet he had shown that a single human thought could ripple through the galaxy. Once feared for his chaos, he was now understood. Humanity's gift was not destruction but the endless power to imagine. And that was enough to change everything.